powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you today by the Gallery Bar, Book, and Games at Ocean Casino Resort this football season, and this is why you need to listen. The Eagles have made a trade, and it is a major trade. Geoff Mosher is here. Boy, we caught you at the right time. Geoff Mosher, Football at 4. The Eagles have made a major trade, and we'll get into the details. I don't know that we have all the details yet, but they are bringing in edge rusher Robert Quinn, who had 18 and a half sacks last year for the Chicago Bears. Moshe, let's get the initial reaction. This just happened literally at 3:59 before Football at 4.
Yeah, I told them to hold off right before I came on, and so I'm really thankful to all people involved with that.
Right. You get a situation where, this happens from time to time. Where
No, Craig, he senses a huge opportunity. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you froze for a second there, but, give us your initial thoughts.
Yeah, I was saying, never, let it be said that Howie Roseman does not go for the jugular when he senses an opportunity. Did it in 2017 when he brought in Jay Ajayi. That was a big part of their championship run. Tried to do it again the next year with Golden Tate when they desperately needed receiving help. And here's a situation where you have the team undefeated. I don't want to say unflappable. They've got some flaws, but they lost Derek Barnett. He was a situational pass rusher. They were looking for something to replace that. And what they got here for just a fourth-round pick is a guy who's way better than Derek Barnett. So they are going for it.
Sorry, this is an all-in move, right?
Surprise anybody.
Well, this is an all-in move. This is an all-in type of move. He's saying, look, we want to get to the quarterback more without having to send blitz. This is a way we can do it.
Yeah. And by the way, at a fourth-round price, that's, for a team that has a bunch of compensation, it's going for it without really having to sacrifice a whole lot. He's certainly, the production is worth the value that you're giving up. Now, he only has one sack this year. I don't know. Chicago's been a mess to begin with, so I wouldn't worry that he's falling off the face of the earth here. Like you said, he had 18 and a half sacks last year for the Bears, and 3 years ago he had 11 and a half sacks. So, the only thing that you got to worry about now, and it's a good concern, is how do they make it all work? You've got him, you got Brandon Graham, you have Hassan Reddick, you have Josh Sweat. They're all edge rushers and who are used to playing a decent amount of snaps, but I'm sure they'll figure that out.
Yeah, that's the thing. He had 18 and a half sacks last year. You mentioned he just has the one. He had 11 the year before that. So, this is a guy who has gotten to the quarterback, but you just said it. What is his best attribute? Does he play with his hand in the ground? Does he rush the passer? Can he stop the run? Who does he pair up with? Is this a rotational thing? In 17, we talked about the Jay Ajayi situation that he split a lot of carries with LeGarrette Blount. But in 17, they also rotated a lot of those pass rushers. So they kind of run Jim Schwartz isn't here anymore. So you're not going to say, hey, they're going to do it the same exact way. But how do we envision Quinn? Would you label Quinn as a higher priority player than, say, Josh Sweat or Brandon Graham?
I think they're a little bit different, although, we have seen Sweat used as a stand-up rusher this year. And we have seen Robert Quinn play both hand in the dirt, standing up, versatile in that regard. So I guess there's some similarity. The speed off the edge that Robert Quinn has always brought has been pretty impressive. Just always had a good motor that way and a good jump. I look at Sweat as a guy who can really, put his hands into you and bull you and push you back a little bit more. So I'm not sure they're exact same type of guys. But I think in this defense, Mike, because we've seen overhang players, we've seen a hand in the dirt edge rushers. Brandon Graham has done both. It's going to be – I imagine that the coaches are going to do what they've continued to do, which is sort of to put the players in the best position for them to succeed, whether that's as a stand-up rusher, hand in the dirt guy, or what have you, moving around, twisting, stunting. Quinn's played in a lot of defenses that do that, twisting and stunting. So the Eagles have been doing that more. So I imagine that's a pretty good fit right there.
Yeah, we've been talking about adding a player of that magnitude. Brian Burns' name was brought up. Bradley Chubb, people kept asking me about him, and you kept saying, well, where are they going to get these snaps? Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat. I mean, are you surprised if they made a splash that it was at this spot? And because it was at this spot, Mosher, what is the message there?
Yeah, and I think that this one makes more sense than some of the guys you're mentioning because Robert Quinn is 32 years old, and he and Brandon Graham are good in that they kind of understand what they are. They know that they're not going to be out there playing 70-80% of the snaps anymore. That's really not, their style. What they are situational pass rushers. I know. Now, last year he made the Pro Bowl. I don't think the Bears had too much. They had gotten rid of Khalil Mack, right? Or didn't? I think Khalil Mack was hurt a couple of games. He wound up starting 16 games last year. He did play 77% of the snaps. But the year before with the Bears, he played 55% of the snaps. He's varied. In 2018, he played 58% of snaps. 2017, 63. So, I imagine he's going to come here and he knows that he's on a much better team and will probably not play 65% of the snaps. It'll probably be a lot lower. But like it did for guys in 2017, that's probably going to preserve him, Mike. And I'm making a lot of assumptions here, but I assume as a veteran, he's going to be okay with that for the opportunity to win a ring.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is at 32 years old, you kind of mentioned his age there, that he can kind of, I don't know, do you kind of say, hey, he could be in that Chris Long type of role where when he goes in, it's third down and they're saying, Robert Quinn, you got one job, dude. You're going after the quarterback. And this means we don't have to ask John Gannon to have to send blitzes, which is all the fans want. But they didn't blitz a lot with that Jim Schwartz team in 17 is because they had multiple guys who can, come off the edge and get pressure themselves.
Correct. This is, I'll say this. This is a guy who is really good at what he does. So you can agree. I agree with you. You can have him out there in a 4-man rush and expect that he's going to beat his guy. But you can also use him as a blitzer. If you want to send 5, which to me is like the safe blitz, you're sending 5, which still gives you a lot of guys in coverage. But it gives you one extra man to throw at it makes the offensive line have to block one-on-one. And if there's a weak spot on an offensive line, a guard or a tackle or even a center, then you get to exploit that matchup just by having that 5th rusher on the field. So it gives them it gives Jonathan Gannon the opportunity to do both. I don't think you'll be seeing an uptick in blitzing because he's here.
Yeah, so you mentioned it, Derek Barnett when he went out. I don't know that I've even noticed who's kind of been filling those snaps. Has anybody, or have they just been giving more snaps to the guys who are here?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Teron Jackson was up the first 2 or 3 games, but he didn't play a whole lot. It really has just been that Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham have been the part of the edge rotation. And there have been times where Kaiser White has been used as an overhang player as well.
Yeah, Graham. And keep in mind, Graham's coming off a pretty serious injury. I mean, to kind of ask him to play at this level constantly every week, you would imagine that there could be, because it could be one of those games where he has 2 sacks and you're like, oh, Graham. And then he goes into this lull for 3 or 4 weeks because, he's kind of an older player. Now, man, this one really came out of right field. I mean, you're just like, whoa, you just added a guy who had almost 20 sacks last year. That is a major move right there.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a good point. When they lost Derek Barnett, they were semi-deep at edge rusher. Not as deep as they've been in the past, but it did force a guy like Brandon Graham coming off that injury to have to play more snaps. And now you're in a position looking forward when you still have 11 games left, where if you have one injury at defensive end, say it's Brandon Graham, then you really only have Sweat and Hassan Reddick, and then behind them, you don't have somebody that you can really rely on to create a lot of Teron Jackson, the rookie Kyron. There was nobody experienced there that you felt good about being able to hold down a lot of snaps. And or same thing if it was Josh Sweat, then Brandon Graham and Hassan Reddick. If it was Hassan Reddick, by the way, you really don't have that kind of an outside linebacker type to back him up, other than a Patrick Johnson. Mm-hmm. So I think a guy like Robert Quinn could even play that role
real quick,
a little bit better.
Real quick, Bosch, according to Mike Garafolo, the Bears will be picking up most of the salary. So the trade is essentially draft capital, but not a lot of money here.
That's impressive because I was just looking at the contract as we were speaking, and he does have some significant. He signed through 2024, and while he doesn't have any big roster bonuses left, he does have some guaranteed money on the contract that would have to be taken in. So it's obviously that gets drained to the Bears in the trade, which always happens, by the way. If it's prorated money from a signing bonus, it gets drained to the team. But as I'm looking at it, yeah, that would have to go to the Bears. That's a significant number right there.
Yeah, so this
which is surprising that they couldn't get more than a fourth when they have to take on all the money.
Yeah, because I was looking at the possibility of the $18.2 million cap hit for next season.
Yeah, no, that will not be the case for the Philadelphia Eagles.
102 career sacks for Robert Quinn, drafted in the first round back in 2011. So really, I mean, this is a guy who's bounced around. He's been traded a couple times. Dallas, the Rams. I mean, he's a guy that has kind of been a hired gun in spots, but he's always been productive, and the Eagles go out and make that big trade. So I would anticipate this was a big surprise that you say anything else in the chamber, but if you do something like this, you would think that they're still making calls. That trade deadline's not till next week.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's look, I mean, they only had to give up a 4 for him.
Yeah, real quick,
So,
on that, they have traded a 4th-round pick. I didn't mention it because I didn't see the compensation. You mentioned it once, but it is a 4th-round pick to Chicago for Robert Quinn, the pass rusher. Go ahead.
Right. So we'll see how he wants to give up more, because he did have to give up some draft compensation for C.J. Gardner-Johnson. If I recall, it was a 4 and a 6. Right. So he's now, if I'm not mistaken.
How much on that front, Moshe? When you have an extra first-round pick, are you more willing to say, you know what, I have 2 first-round talents coming in. I can dip into my mid-round bag a little bit.
No doubt about it. And I think they also have a future 2, if not this year, then the next year. So I think when you have extra picks in the early rounds, you are absolutely more confident about dealing picks in the mid rounds, especially when it strengthens your team to this extent.
Yeah. And by the way, he had signed with the Bears a 5-year, I think it was a 5-year, $70.5 million contract. For those of you who remember, Robert Quinn was playing in Dallas. He had 11 and a half sacks and 22 quarterback hits with the Cowboys, and then the Bears signed him to that big deal, and he has been 18 and a half. He went from 11 and a half to 18 and a half, so the Eagles add that to their line. Is this a guy that you pair with Reddick? Can you send those two guys together? Do you play them together, or does that make you too vulnerable against the run?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to find out. I don't think this disrupts what they usually come out with on first and second down in their 5-1 formation. I think this is going to throw a little bit of uncertainty into what their nickel package will look like, and I imagine they'll have a few of them now. A few of their different pass rush packages. You may even find, and this is something Adam and I talked about on the podcast. I said, if they add an extra edge rusher, like a Bradley Chubb or Robert Quinn, whatever, it's hard because you can't even kick Sweat or you can't kick Reddick inside. He's not a guy who rushes from the interior with his hand in the dirt. You've done that with Brandon Graham in the past, so you could theoretically move Graham in if you had Reddick and Sweat on the outside, or Reddick and Quinn here. But that takes Fletcher Cox or Javon Hargrave off the field. And those guys are pass rushers too. Now, you can't have enough good pass rushers, but I'm very curious to see. You almost ride the hot hand here. I like Javon Hargrave had a great year last year. Is he having a great year this year? Not particularly. So if it continues, do they just say, all right, you know what? He's just not been as like he was last year, so we're now going to kick Brandon Graham inside with Fletcher Cox and then have Robert Quinn and Hassan Reddick on the outside and give a couple of snaps off to Josh Sweat. And then next time we're in the same formation, we'll bring Josh Sweat and give one of those other 2 edge rushers a time off. So I don't know. It just allows them to be very selective on who they think is doing the best job getting to the quarterback in one-on-one scenarios.
Yeah, and another thing is, we've seen them use 5 guys up front too. I mean, so you can probably maybe have those guys hang off the sides, Reddick and Quinn, and put your tackles in the inside. You can go with Davis on the nose and then pick two other guys to kind of be on the inside there.
Well, that's what they've done, but those have been the task. So you've had Davis on the nose, you've had Hargrave and Cox as your interior defensive lineman flanking him, and then you've had Sweat and Reddick on the outside. So if you do put Robert Quinn in, you do still have to take one of those guys off the field, and I think you can make an argument that none of them really have been deserved to lose playing time.
That's the thing about this trade. Not that makes it a head scratcher. I mean, you had a guy with 102 career sacks, 18 and a half last year. It's just that we kept wondering, okay, Brian Burns, those guys sound great, but where are they getting time? Where are they getting snaps? And I guess you can somewhat ask the same question here, but at the same time, you're saying, man, we did. I guess the question goes, is this guy a better player than Brandon Graham or a better player than Josh Sweat, that he overtakes their snap counts?
Yeah, and again, like 11 games left, the playoffs, the notion that you're not going to have any injuries to Sweat, Graham, or Reddick, is a nice one, but who knows? As soon as one guy gets some injuries, which is going to bound to happen, the trade's going to look even better, Right now, it's a logjam. They'll figure it out. So all of them will probably take fewer snaps, and they'll probably be more creative in their blitz packages or even pass rushing, 4-down, 4-man rush packages. They'll just be more selective with their personnel, and that's a great advantage to have because, as an offense, you're trying to figure out who to block, and you don't know who's going to be in on certain downs. So that's a great advantage right now. And then if there are any injuries, it'll be even more advantageous for them.
Funny, I was going to ask you, about the – this team's 6-0 coming out of the bye. What could be some of the issues? Well, injuries. They haven't had to deal with a lot of injuries. The only injuries they've really dealt with is on the offensive line. Can they withstand the injuries? Where's a key spot on this field where they can't afford an injury? We know corner would be one. I guess you would say if they lost another defensive lineman, an edge rusher, that would be a problem, but they just kind of addressed that.
Yeah, right. So now safety, I think, would be another spot where if they lost either Epps or C.J. Gardner-Johnson for a long amount of time or the year, that would be a huge drop-off. But certainly, again, when you lost Derek Barnett, you were challenged there, and now they're not challenged as far as depth at that position.
Yeah, you said it. This is a big upgrade over Derek Barnett.
I mean, yeah. I mean, honestly, and I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to disparage anybody here, but I mean, I think his career says he's even a better player than Brandon Graham has been. This guy's had 19 and a half sacks. He's had 18 and a half sacks. He's had over 10 and a half or more 3 other times along with those two. So, I mean, he plays the run well too, as I understand it. So, I mean, he's a really, really good player. He's just on he's 32. That's all.
Yeah. Robert Quinn, Philadelphia Eagles, welcome aboard. 4th round pick. Eagles add pass rusher in a trade with the Bears. It just went down during Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. Real quick, Lane Johnson concussion protocol. Do we anticipate that there's a possibility? I mean, obviously there's always the possibility, but do we think that – I mean, he had that 2 weeks ago. Do we anticipate that he'll be ready to go on Sunday?
I anticipate he will. I know he told some reporter, I saw Jeff McLean tweet today, that he's going to play. I was surprised that he was still in the concussion protocol, but I also have to go back and check. When there's a bye week involved, do you just sort of pick up where you left off? Like you have to complete certain number of tests to get back on the field, and that's all he has to do to clear, and he couldn't do it last week because they were off? Right. Or is this still because he's felt symptoms? I have to kind of look into that.
All right, well, that's the one injury. I think Nick Sirianni did say today that no other injuries coming out of that Dallas game. They'll play the Steelers this Sunday at 1 right here on 97.3 ESPN. Can you play a pass rusher on a couple of days, getting him in?
Well, I think you can.
Go get the pass rusher. Go get the passer.
I think, just go get the quarterback right there. Go get the quarterback. Throw him in 10, 11 snaps,
Yeah. We saw McCaffrey play last week. I mean, so I would imagine if McCaffrey
saw
could
Robbie
do it.
Anderson, I think that's tough for receivers to do, but you saw him run a few go routes for the Arizona Cardinals just a few days after they traded for him.
Yeah, I would anticipate you'll see. I don't know. He was wearing 94, I know, in Chicago. We'll see. I think does Sweat wear 94? I don't know.
Sweaty wears he does wear 94, doesn't he? Yeah.
I think he does. Don't quote me on that. I used to be one of them guys that knows all the numbers, but That was a time in my life that my brain worked a lot better than it does today. Geoff
Yeah.
Mosher.
Speaking of brain not working, did you see Nick Sirianni's press conference with the Pittsburgh media?
No.
He was talking about how he.
Okay, Sweat does wear 94, Josh says. But I do know, we were talking about this earlier, that he is a Pittsburgh Pirates fan.
Yeah, he grew up a Pirates fan, and he was giving the Pittsburgh media in their conference call his recollections of the 92 Pirates who made the National League Championship Series. And he said something about Sid Bream getting thrown out at home by Barry Bonds. And, it's sort of like the scene from Animal House where he gets the war wrong. The Germans bombing Pearl Harbor, and the media was probably like, just let him go with it. I mean, it's only one of the most infamously bad moments in Pittsburgh history that Bream slid safely into home from the hit from Francisco Cabrera, but that's okay. He was
Good
young.
Pull by you, so Francisco Cabrera. Good spot. All right, Geoff Mosher, Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. Robert Quinn traded to the Eagles. For more details, go to our website, 973ESPN.com. Thanks, Moshe.
Take care, bub.
All right, there's Geoff Mosher. So we had him right on the spot for Football at 4. Robert Quinn is a member of the Eagles now.